I was asked to speak on male-female relations, and I will do that, as well as deal with some other issues related to the survival and the advancement of a pleasure. I was asked to speak on male-female relations, and I will do that, as well as uh, deal with some other issues related to the survival and the advancement of the Black community. I'd like also to invite you down in about 2 weeks to our new location, as the introducer indicated here. I am part owner of the Harlem Graphics Arts Center, a print center, copy center, uh, center. We'll have quite a collection of books, both Afrocentric books and other general books. We are right at 125th Street, 5th Street, near 7th Avenue. I was right down the street from the Apollo Theater on the same side. I'd like to see you come down. We are trying there not only to build a business, but to build an institution to serve as an example for the youth and others and adults of what can be done if Black people work together. We recognize that it's necessary for us to build an economy to provide jobs for ourselves and for our children, and this is our first step in doing that. We recognize that we must get access to our own monies and use those monies to our advantage as people. And that's what Harlem Graphic Arts is about. We will also give courses there that will provide education that's relevant to the Black community as well. So I hope when you're down in that part of the woods, you'll come by and see us. We'll be happy to see you. Now, we're going to talk a bit about man-woman relations. The thing that we have to recognize, of course, is that the relationship between men and women, or between a man and a woman, is not an isolated situation. That the way you love one another, the way you love your girlfriends, your boyfriends, your husbands, your wives, your children, is rooted in a political social system. Love does not flow out of your heart, and it's just not natural like we tend to think of it as being. It is influenced by your own experience as an individual, as well as by your experience as a people. One of the reasons why I wrote the book, The Developmental Psychology of the Black Child, is the fact that I wanted to bring to people's attention that you just couldn't read a standard book on developmental psychology and apply what was found in that book to the Black child. Because Black people have a unique history. It is the history of the Black child is not the history of the white child. The history of the Black parent is not the history of the white parent. The political social position that Black people are in this country is not the political social position of whites. The psychology of Black people flows from the history and experience of Black people. If you went into a psychologist's office, he would want or she would want to know your own personal history, because it is only through understanding your personal history as an individual that your behavior can be understood. A psychologist or psychiatrist could not take the history of another individual and just apply it to you and say, well, I know this other person very well, so therefore you must behave this way too. And the values they have and the ideas they have must be the same you have. The only difference between you and this other person is that they have a different color from you. That is not the way psychology is built, ladies and gentlemen. You can only be understood as an individual in terms of your own history and experience. When we talk about then the psychology of Black people, we must understand that psychology in terms of the experience of our people. You cannot go and get a psychology from another people's whose history and experience has been different and just impose it upon yourself. You will create problems. And therefore, I looked at the history and experience of Black people and talked about psychology in those terms. We must talk about education in those terms, business in those terms, and anything else that is relevant to us in those terms. We must recognize that the love relationship between the Black mother and her child, between the Black father and his child, between the mother and the fathers and the sisters and the brothers in the Black family is shaped by the political social situation in which we as people live. And that has to be taken into consideration. So love, you see, under those circumstances, does not just flow up out of the heart. It's influenced by social political circumstances. If there was a difference in the family in terms of who was the darker or who was the lighter or who had the good hair or who had the bad hair, that means that racism in the political social system has entered into the parent. And the parent then transfers that racism, even in the way he or she relates to the children, onto the child, and creates in that child then an attitude toward itself and toward the world that flows from being in a particular social political position. You see, then when the white psychologist talks about the parent and the child, they can talk as if it is the relationship between the parent and the child that makes the child what it is. However, when we talk about the Black parent and the Black child, we must talk about that Black parent's relationship to the white world, that Black parent's political position in the world. How Black people have been dealt with in this society must be considered. And all of these things influence to a good extent how that Black parent is going to relate to his or her child, what they're going to say to their children, how they're going to prepare their children for life, how they are going to express their love or not love toward their children. So then you must understand then that love, what we call love, is shaped, created, and maintained by social political systems. Therefore, as you will see when we go through this lecture, you must see how then your social life and existence itself is going to influence the way you relate to your husbands, to your wives, to your boyfriends, to your sisters, and to your brothers. I want to talk a moment or two in terms of what we call um, the relationship between love and community. I want us to understand that love between a man and a woman, or between a parent and a child, thank you very much, is ultimately a gift to the community itself. Thank you, Karen.
their pens on the coast of West, Central, Southern, and East Africa. We pour to the ancestors who did not know as they were stripped of all clothing and sent denuded into boats, packed like animals, and strewn their bones across the floor of the Atlantic and the Indian Ocean. We pour to them who in the last moment on Africa grabbed the sand and grabbed the dirt and put it in their mouths and understood that the only thing they might have to preserve their place in that continent was their memory of that place and their ability to pass it on to their children. We pour to them. Ashe.
Ashe.
We pour to those Africans and their children who finding themselves cast adrift in Santiago, Cuba, who found themselves cast adrift in Porto, Spain, Trinidad, and Port-au-Prince, Haiti, who found themselves cast adrift in New Orleans and Charleston and Mobile, who found themselves cast adrift in Salvador, Bahia, who found themselves cast adrift in Barbados and the archipelago that formed the wayward and the windward coast. We found them in these places learning Portuguese and Spanish and French, whose often first words was, "Oh my God, oh Madre de Dios," who found themselves praying to survive and pass on to their children the memories. We pour to those ancestors who are represented in the thousands buried in all the square miles of where we stand, and who sit here buried before us in 400 caskets forged of wood from West Africa with Adinkra symbols. Each one of them, each woman, man, and child, symbolic of millions. The children of those who could not be killed, we pour Ashe.
Ashe.
We pour to their children who somehow survived the hells of enslavement and fought for emancipation in the Caribbean, the French, British, Dutch Caribbean, who fought for emancipation in South America, who fought for emancipation in Central America, who fought the struggles we refer to as the Civil War in the United States, who came out of that, marched out of enslavement through Reconstruction, and found themselves making great migrations, eventually ending up in places like New York. Their children's children, who making a way for themselves, became our great-great-grandparents, our grandparents, our great-grandparents, our parents. Those who, when the first bones were discovered in this space, held their hands and said, "Stop, no more." We are here to speak for those who can no longer speak with their mouths. We pour for those ancestors, some of whom came to Howard University in 2004 and followed these caskets all the way back to New York. The ones whose names we know and the ones whose names we don't. And at this moment, as we pour this libation, I would ask anyone who feels comfortable to say the name of someone in your bloodline who is no longer physically here, but who you know made it possible for you to be here. Go ahead, say the names. We pour to the names that we hold collectively. Ganga Zumba in Brazil, Toussaint Louverture, Jean-Jacques Dessalines, and Henri Christophe in Haiti. We pour to the great Avengers, Nanny of the Maroons of Jamaica. We pour to the great ancestors, Harriet Tubman, Sojourner Truth, Frederick Douglass. Say the names that you study. Who are the names of the ancestors that you have come to hold in your heart and your mind as you hope that you can do what they did for us, for your children and children's children? Let's say some of those famous names. Malcolm X, John Henry Clark, John T. Jackson, Jacob Carruthers. And finally, two final libations. We pour to those who make it possible for us to do what we do. We pour to these rangers who stand guardian over this sacred space. We pour to these Africans and these folks who have come from Howard University, the staff, the faculty, the administrators who brought us here today to bear witness. This is not a libation, but an affirmation, because their hearts still beat, their tongues still speak, their minds still think, and their minds still wish the best for us. We pour for all of those people who surrounded us on this journey today and made it possible for us to be here. We pour this affirmation of thanks, Ashe.
Ashe.
And finally, we pour to your children's children's children who will one day stand on this space and speak your name. Ashe.
Ashe.
You tune into the Ancestral Rock on your station for progressive information and handpicked quality music. with the sounds of Miles Davis underneath. It's hot, unseasonably hot in the ATL, and we need an authentic cooling system. You know that way there? The artificial thing ain't working at all on any level, and the world is coming to see that live and direct. We greet you in the name of love, and we're grateful for this opportunity to be together, for this group hug. When last time you had a real good hug, like a real good hug? All the science, and I say that with air quotes now, is proclaiming the healing qualities of the hugs and the oxytocin and all of that. And that's nothing light. That's nothing to be played with. That's nothing to be taken for granted. So we're here on the radio, and we have the ability to exercise this same power, and we shall do so today. Unless you're living under a rock, I ain't got to tell you about some of the things that's going on in the headlines and what's happening in the world. This is Solution-Based Radio, 89.3 WRFG Atlanta, the Ancestral Rock, radio station for progressive information and handpicked quality music. So we're going to continue with our programming. I'm not going to do too much talking this afternoon. Just want y'all to let you know who you're listening to right now. We've been hearing we heard from Dr. Greg Electrocar with the libation, of course, poured at the African Burial Ground in New York City. Constant reminder that the wealth and any so-called greatness that this empire ever had is built literally and figuratively on the bones, on the backs of African people. This is the reality. And of course, we're hearing Miles Davis Quintet underneath around midnight. It's not close to midnight, but as the good Dr. Martin Luther King would say, it's definitely midnight in the social order. Actually, it's probably beyond midnight at this point. It's probably closer to dawn, and that's another part where there's that deep darkness. In some places, we're already experiencing the dawn, in some realms of life, and in others, all of the derelicts, as Florence Scovel-Shinn said, are coming to bear. They're rearing their heads like the parasites, fighting before they're expelled from their body, fighting to hold on to whatever they can latch on to. And so here we are in this moment, and we're grateful for the ability to call our ancestors to the witness stand. So we've been hearing a little bit from Dr. Amos Wilson, Black love, Black male and female relationships. I don't think there's any need for the why. Let's just hear the how from Dr. Nana Amos Wilson. In the next hour, we're going to have another special ancestral guest. Y'all stay tuned to yourself and call in if you desire to. You can check us out on YouTube as well, Facebook. YouTube is On The Farm LLC, and our Ross Kofi page on Bob Fest page on Facebook. Just another added perk for some visual interaction. But this is all about the radio, WRFG Radio, 89.3 on the FM dial, WRFG.org. Stay tuned to yourself.
I've emphasized before that when you have a child, you just don't have a child for yourself. The child just does not belong to you as a mother or as a father. A child is born into a community of people. The child is a gift to the community because the child is not going to live in a world by itself. It's going to live in a community where it relates to other people. Its behavior is going to influence other people in the community. If it turns out to be a delinquent or crime-oriented, it's going to negatively affect the lives of the people. The community has to share in educating that child. The community has to share in supporting that child, feeding that child, providing jobs for that child, providing protection for that child. The community, if the child does not turn out well, has to provide rehabilitative services and supportive services and other kinds of services for that child. So then when a child is born, it is not only the responsibility of the parents who gave it birth, but it is also a community responsibility. And so consequently, when one has children, one must not only think in terms of the how the child is going to relate purely to the mother or the father that gave it birth, but also how it is going to relate to the people itself. A child must ultimately grow up to contribute to the community's ability to support it and to support its family, to protect its interest, because it is only with the community's support that the family and the child itself continues to survive. So we must keep in mind then that children are ultimately born to the community because they will influence the nature of the community. If the children that are born in the community are self-hating, as we will talk later on, or have problems with their identity, or self-control, or destructive and so forth, you will see a community that will fall apart, a community that is at odds with itself, a community that is divided, a community that by its very nature will continue to destroy other children and other people. The greatest gift that a parent can give to a community is the gift of beautiful, healthy children, well-behaved children, children who know themselves, who have a firm identity, and so forth, children who are able to love healthily and love in a righteous type of manner. So in a sense, you may not be great or you may not be famous or you whatever, but we all have the potential of being good parents. And that is a major contribution to the advancement of a community and to its survival. I say that also to say that love is a gift to the community as well. How well you love yourself as an individual. The sins of the first generation are visited now until the 14th generation. Often it will take sometimes 3 and 4 or more generations for a family to live out the hate between a mother and a father. The children get it, their children get it, their children get it, and it can go right on before it's finally worked through. The children's reactions to poor love relations between mothers and fathers can lead to their own personal problems, their own interpersonal problems with other people as well. Those problems sweep out into the community. Children suffering from a feeling of a lack of love from their own parents may then deal with that by becoming delinquent in their behavior, by not reaching their own potentials, by not functioning in schools the way they should, by themselves getting into trouble, by themselves becoming impregnated at a too early age, and so forth. And this in itself affects community services, community resources, the kind of community that the individual lives in. So when we love as men and women, as sisters and brothers, this love also is rooted in community and is necessary for community functioning. Love, romantic love, or whatever love, is not a selfish undertaking. And it should not be perceived as something just between you and your partner. It moves beyond that. It's going to influence more people than just you and your partner. It's going to influence the community itself. And consequently, then the community has a right to concern itself with the so-called nature of love. Love, along with the related concepts such as oneness, and we see people wanting to get a sense of oneness when they're in love, unity, uniting, being together, identity, identifying, becoming one with the person you love. It becomes interesting. We talk about love in terms of blood relations. And yet the person you marry is really not your blood relation in actuality. But yet somehow that love, if it's right, becomes as strong or sometimes even stronger than blood relations, you see. So because love tends, as we see it in this culture, to unite and bring about identity between two or more people that goes beyond their biological relatedness, that often is stronger than their biological relatedness. Love along with commitment, caring and sharing, belonging, relatedness, commonality, that's having things in common, is that which creates a community, is that which supports a community and maintains a community. So then the thing that keeps a community together is, of course, the nature of love that inheres in its families and between its families, and ultimately the nature of love that is put out toward the community itself and toward one's people. And all of this influences the nature of romantic love. When you want to destroy a community, when you want to destroy a people, as we will talk a bit about later on, you destroy the nature of their romantic love, destroy their ability to love one another in a healthy sort of way. And we will see. When you see and you think about the problems we have as people and as individuals in loving each other romantically, you must recognize in good part that problem and those problems have been set up by a political social system. Because we shall see that love, the love that we have for one another, is the greatest threat to the people who rule over us. And it is necessary for those people who rule over us and who rule over African people the world over, if those people are to stay in power, they must destroy our ability to love each other in a healthy sort of way. This is why, even if you're concerned with your individual love for your boyfriend or your husband, you cannot separate that love from what is going on in the world, politically and socially, because the nature of that love is defined by political, social circumstances. And if you can't understand why you have problems in your love relations, perhaps a good part of it is because you have not taken time to understand the nature of the political, social situation in which you live, because you have been made to think that your love is merely the concern of you and your partner and not rooted in what is going on in the world. Love is a part of the world you live in. The community ultimately defines love anyway. You see, many of us are raised in this culture, and we've been raised to think love is something just natural and just flows out of living. I'm speaking now particularly of romantic love. But actually, you have to learn how to love. Love is taught to you. You teenagers, you're being taught what love is. How are you taught that? You're taught it by listening to these records all the time. And you hear your idols singing about love. You make me feel so good. I can't eat. I can't sleep. I can't live without you. And then what do the people say? I must be in love. You see? And, I can't go on. Here's my heart. Don't break it. You see? My life has no meaning, and all of these kinds of things. And you read what? Poetry. And of course, many of you in this age now where you're writing from the city of love and from the street of this and so forth. I've forgotten my old rhymes when I was a kid. We all wrote those things. You look at TV and you see Dallas and you see Knots Landing and you see show after show after show. And you think you're just looking at entertainment, but actually they're teaching you what love is, or what love is about, how you're supposed to feel when you're in love, you see. If you feel this way, if you can't eat and you can't get him off your mind, if you dream about him all the time, if shivers run up your spine when you see him and all that, that means you're in love. In a sense, if there was no one around to tell you that, you wouldn't feel it. You wouldn't feel love. Now, romantic love, believe it or not, is only in this culture about 200 or 300 years old. Prior to, say, the 1700s, people didn't marry for love. In fact, they saw love, what we call love, as a terrible basis for marriage. They fought against it. They married in terms of maintaining family lines, in terms of maintaining property, in terms of maintaining political and other kinds of associations, class association. Your husband might have been picked out for you at birth. You might not have even seen your husband until your wedding day. You would not have had anything to say about who your husband or your wife was. That would have been the result of negotiation between your parents, between your whole clan and your family. Because these families recognize that when marriage takes place between a man and a woman, the families are married as well. That you don't marry just an individual, you marry into a family, you see. And consequently, it was the family that came first in determining marriage and marital relations. Now, this sounds very harsh to us today because we've been brought up with this other concept of marriage. That is, you marry who you love. But we can trace the history of marriage based on romantic love. And it, to a great extent, was built on novels and poems, came out of the courts of Europe to a very great extent, which is the reason why we still use kind of the word courting. Many of those people had nothing to do all day but develop rules about how you used to court and how you deal with the man and a woman and so forth. And eventually that worked its way down into society. Poets started writing poems about love and emotion, and eventually the average person started picking it up. As the society changed toward industrialization and so forth, and as families began to break up, where aunts and uncles and 3 and 4 generations no longer lived in the same household, then people started making their own individual choices about who they would marry and so forth. And often those choices started being made in terms of emotions and feelings. We have found out in this culture, though, that merely marrying someone because you love them does not guarantee the unity of the marriage hardly any more than the other forms of marrying people as well. But the point then I'm trying to make here then is this, that even the community you live in defines what love is and teaches you to love in one way or the other. So even in that sense, love is community, and it is a part of community. To a good extent, some of the problems that we have in this country and in our communities is a result of the wrong definition of what love is, where the community has come to accept a concept of love that works against its interest. When people are getting married because they are in love, and yet half of those marriages are more fall apart, and the other half of those are living in conflict and hostility, then it must make you think that there is something wrong in the way we define love in this system and in our community. It means then there is a time perhaps for the community to redefine what love is and what love is about. It is in your interest as young people that the community teaches you a new form of romantic love and loving one another. Why? Because it will enhance your ability to stay with the man you love and to stay with the woman you love, to keep your children with you in your family, to develop healthy people and to develop a healthy community. So your interest, even as young people, should be in how your community defines what love is. Not only should you listen to these records or just dance to these records, you should take out some time and think about what kind of love is this record projecting? Is this a kind of love that is ultimately going to be productive for me and my boyfriend, for me and my husband, for me and my children? And you may find that some of these records you're listening to are really not in your best interest. While they're making you feel good and they're good for the party, when you look down the road, the way they're defining love and how a man should relate to a woman may ultimately destroy you and destroy your love relationship, the one that you want to keep so much. So then there is a very definite relationship between love and community. and the community itself has a very deep and abiding interest in what love is and how love should be defined and expressed.
WRFG Atlanta, 89.3 in the FM dial. Dr. Amos Wilson on the Ancestral Witness Stand, and we give thanks. We're going to take a very short break to handle some business, play some announcements, and be right forward with you. Go ahead and send a text message, send a telepathic message. How about that? All the other technology you use, continue to practice that one as well, your ancient technology. Drop an inbox link, however you got to do. Spread the word and let them know we're on the radio. Family business. 404-523-8989 is the number in the studio. 404-523-8989. Stay tuned. We'll be right forward with much more.
The following is a message from one of WRFG's 501c3 supporters. Georgia State University's Rialto Center for the Arts presents Cochran & Company on Saturday, April 24th at 8 p.m. Dove Award-nominated Cochran & Company blends elements of pop, soul, and gospel-influenced music, creating a concert experience for a wide range of audiences. They'll be joined by a special guest, Hope Darst, best known for her songs Peace Be Still and Promise Keeper. Rialto Center is located at 84 7th Street Northwest in the heart of downtown Atlanta. For tickets and more information, rialto.gsu.edu. Once again, that's rialto.gsu.edu.
The following is a public service announcement from one of WRFG's 501c3 supporters. The Georgia Cooperative Development Center, in association with Athens-Clarke County, presents Shared Futures Co-op Academy, a shared services cooperative training program and pilot launch designed to support the growth of cooperative enterprises, workforce development, collective work, and positive social community impact. This initiative provides education and resources for individuals and organizations in the Athens-Clarke County area interested in learning cooperative business models and how to launch your own cooperative with a pilot co-op launch. Exploring shared services as the pathway to stronger, more resilient communities is the goal. For more information or registration, the website is athens.coop or athenscoopacademy.com. And the email is info@georgiacoopdc.org.
WRFG Atlanta, 89.3 FM, 46 minutes after the hour. Time, boy. This whole thing of time is a serious thing that we keep on needing to, I don't even say grapple with, because that's some foolishness. You know, you don't fight against nature. But we definitely have to adjust and continue to adjust because it's a new timeline. And don't let that get over your head as some kind of esoteric talk. It could be esoteric, have esoteric reality as well. It's talking about very tangible as well, though, you know, right here on Earth, even in the whole 3D, if that even still exists, and this dimension, right? Time is a serious thing. Everybody talking about how it feel like the day just run by, and that's for a reason. And just like anything else, when we pay attention to the medicine that comes with whatever it is that is the food that we're presented with on our plate, that's when we start living. This one is a recently departed. He's not yet an ancestor. He's definitely, we pray, on his way, on a smooth transition. Can't call his name because of the FCC rules before I play the tune. So just hold this, our mama and papa, our sister and brethren.
Life is just for living. Life is just for living. See that cat sitting on the mat, thinking about what is what and who is who. That cat is me. That cat is you. See that guy staring in the sky, taking in the beat of the sun. He's having fun. That guy is me. That guy is you. Taking in today's vibrations, tomorrow's coming down slow. Taking it free and easy, that's the only way to go. Yes, I'd rather be me, rather be free, to be myself, my way, that's how it's got to be. This is the song that young men sing. Life is just for living. Life is just for living. Life is just for living. Feel like a star, leaning on the bar, rapping to my pals, rapping about the gals, bottle in my hand, living 'cause I can. Taking in today's vibrations, tomorrow's coming down slow. Taking it free and easy, that's the only way to go. Yes, I'd rather be me, rather be free, to be myself, my way, that's how it's got to be. This is the song that young men sing. Life is just for living. 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 Life is just for living.
The mighty Ernie Smith, the great baritone, Baba Ernie Smith, trotting up in Marcus Garvey whirlwind. Let's continue with our regularly scheduled program. Nana Wilson at the microphone stand.
I want to indicate here then some things about the consequences of what we call the love instinct. Freud has a very interesting theory of what he calls the id. We won't go into detail there, but however, he sees the id as containing two major instincts, along with others. A love instinct, what he calls sometimes eros, and a death instinct, you see. And we'll see in a minute what he meant by that death instinct. And it's a very paradoxical kind of theory once you think of it, particularly about the death instinct, the idea that people also have an instinct that moves them toward death as well. But when you get a little chance for some heavy thinking, I think you might see it's not as paradoxical as it sounds. In a sense, we are born to die, and in a sense, we die from living. So death is almost a side effect of living. So they are kind of intrinsically related one to the other. But love, let's look at the love instinct and how that instinct is expressed. Certainly, it's expressed sexually, and certainly it's expressed in terms of reproduction. So love and sexuality are closely related because they lead to the maintenance of the species and the reproduction of the species. Love involves the preservation of oneself. If you love yourself, you love your body, you love who you are, you love your family, you love your man, you love your woman, you love your community, you want to preserve those things. You want to see them grow and develop. And this is, of course, what the love instinct does. It not only, though, preserves the self, it preserves others. You want to preserve the people that you love. The love instinct expresses itself in procreation, in the giving of birth, in reproducing. This is how, of course, we maintain the life of the group itself. Love also is involved in growth because life is about growth. It is about development. It is about transcendence. It is about enhancement. It is about fulfilling one's potential. The child, the little baby, is filled with potential. It is born a few inches long, but it has the potential to grow feet long, you see. It's born then at a certain level of mental activity, and yet there's a potential of great intellectual growth, social growth, psychological growth, and all types of growth. Love will permit this potential to express itself, to actualize itself. So you can see love is an enhancing element, a growth element, a developing element. Love then that exists in a community is the element that makes that community grow and develop and fulfill its potential. When a community is shrinking and falling into destruction, you can bet there is an absence of the right kind of love in that community. When it is falling in upon itself and the people are killing one another, hurting one another, or destroying one another, you can bet it is because the love instinct there has been misdirected or is not functioning in the way it should function. Love, of course, is geared towards survival, protection, and liberation, freeing people instead of restricting them. It moves toward discovery, goodness, and healing. Love is reconstructive. It repairs the individual. It rebuilds the individual and stimulates growth and development. Love is elation. I'm sure this is the side of love we hear most about, isn't it? Elation, euphoria, feeling good. Love has its own natural high, its own euphoria. When you're loved by your family, you love, and when you love your family, when your family has permitted you to grow and develop and fulfill your potential, when your community is concerned and cares about you and shares with you and you do the same with it, when you can sit down and not be afraid to walk the streets of your community, not be afraid to speak and say hello to people on the streets of your community, when you can have a decent conversation without feeling you have to manipulate someone or someone manipulates you, there is a beauty and there is a euphoria about that kind of feeling. There is a tendency to smile and a tendency to be happy and a tendency to be free and a tendency to be honest and open. This is what love does when it operates well within a community itself. It takes you beyond yourself. That is, it is what we call transcends. It moves out beyond. You glow, and people pick up your glow. Your love becomes infectious, and people reflect it back on you, and you reflect it back on them. And therefore, you feel good. It feels wonderful to dance and to sing and to be even a little silly sometimes and to joke with them sometimes and to play with people that you love. And it just makes you glow with health and glow with happiness, and it's a beautiful kind of thing, and you naturally want to stay with your people. You naturally want to be around your community. You naturally want to be a part of its movement forward and so forth. So love has in it a built-in beauty and glory, a built-in euphoria. We're going to see then that love can develop from love. I think Whitney Houston has a song out now. What's the title of it? The current one? I know you know it's very popular. Pardon me? The Greatest Love of All. And part of it is said she found her love when she found what? She found herself, and she found her love in herself. You cannot love, as we shall see in a moment, others without self-love. You cannot be filled with hatred and hostility toward yourself and love somebody else in a healthy manner. You can only get to know other people through knowing yourself. It is through the self that you reach others. You will only, though, get to know yourself if you're surrounded by people who love you and love you in a healthy sort of way. As we shall see, when you're around people who don't love you in a healthy sort of way, you're going to hide parts of yourself from yourself. You're going to become blind to parts of yourself. You're going to be caught up in the emotions of hatred and hostility and revenge and resentment, and your energy and your tension is going to be caught up in those nasty emotions, and you're going to be a nasty person as a result thereof. And as I'll show you in a minute, you're going to be able to love. You're going to be able to, with all of this nastiness, because nasty people do fall in love. Okay, hateful people fall in love, and we'll see. But we'll see in a minute. It's going to be a peculiar kind of love. It's going to be a love, ultimately, though, that's going to destroy them and the people they love. Many people, I would say a large percentage of children and wives and husbands are destroyed in the name of love. I'm doing this to you because I what? Love you. And yet, when you look at what's being done, it's often projecting hate, but hate covered with a veneer of love. So then, love that comes from love permits the self and other people to develop. Love that comes from love is liberating. Love that comes from love permits other people to develop their potential. We will see later on that love that comes from hate is love that's destructive, is love that restricts, is love that's possessive, is love that makes the other person a servant of oneself, is love that ultimately degrades other individuals. You see, so in a family, a child has to be raised with love and in a loving sort of way, so that when it loves, it then will create more lovely people and lovely children. Let's look a moment then at the hate instinct. We talked about the love instinct or the life instinct, and now let's look at the death instinct. And there is a death instinct within us.
89.3 WRFG Atlanta, WRFG.org, your station for progressive information and handpicked quality music. Yes, indeed. We're going to play this important announcement and come right forward with some more of Dr. Amos Wilson before we switch gears. It's hard to come off of that train, you know, right there, boy. You know, because, yeah, there's nothing wrong with feeling good. And I was going to say, it's not just some feel-good talk. Even though there's nothing wrong with feeling good. But the sustainable kind of feel-good is when you can remove all the parasites. And then you just live with the homeostasis, which is your birthright, which is your default setting in the first place, right? So that's what the bitter to the mouth and sweet to the belly is all about. Well, Dr. Wilson dropping it, I don't think it's even that bitter to the mouth, is it? Tell me how you feel. 404-523-8989. Do remember.
Funding for this program is made possible by listeners like you and the following sponsors. The Atlanta Jazz Festival returns to Piedmont Park Memorial Day weekend from May 23rd through May 25th. This year's lineup includes Christian McBride and Ursa Major, Donnie the Colored Section, Esperanza Spalding, Destin Conrad, Butcher Brown, Kamasi Washington, The Roots, and PJ Morton. For more information, atljjazzfest.com.
Freud talked about it as saying in man there's an inherent need or desire for him to return to his origins. We, of course, are people, our bodies are made of the earth. Some of you, of course, are familiar with the Bible verse, dust thou art, and to dust thou shalt return. And so he builds his philosophy to a degree by saying then ultimately the end point of life is a returning back to the earth itself. And of course, there are philosophical issues that this implies. But I think what is more interesting is how the death instinct is expressed. We saw earlier that the love instinct is expressed in many different ways. So is the death instinct. Let's look at some of the consequences. The death instinct expresses itself in terms of hate. That's an expression of death. When you hate somebody, you also often want to do what? You want to kill them. You want to destroy them, hurt them, make them feel pain. So death comes through you onto the other individual. You say resentment is an expression of the death instinct. Hostility, hostile aggression, retarding other people's growth and development, what we call disenhancement. Just as love leads to enhancement, hatred leads to disenhancement, disenchantment. Just as love leads to harmony, hatred leads to disharmony. Just as love then leads to growth by the person you're dealing with, hate leads to restriction, holding them back. We, of course, as people have been the victim of hatred, and hatred has locked us into ghettos and locked us into poor schooling and locked us into all kinds of corners and ghettos of all types. Hatred then brings about ultimately the death and destruction of other people. We must recognize that the world is a perfect place. And I've often said, though, that means you don't confuse perfection with good. I didn't say it was necessarily a good place. Perfection and goodness are not one and the same thing. You can be perfectly evil as well as perfectly good. Perfection has to do with the precision of a thing, the precision of relations, the lawfulness between a cause and an effect. It talks about then, when you talk about perfection, you're saying, surely this thing is always followed by that thing. Now, then the point I'm trying to get at here then is this. If you have hate in your heart, if you have resentment in your heart, if you have anger and fear in your heart and hostility in your heart, the law of perfection says you are going to create a world that is destructive. You cannot have these emotions in yourself and not produce a destructive kind of world. This, of course, was what Jesus was talking about when he talked about the gospel. Gospel implying what? Good news. When he talks about love thy neighbor as thyself. Greet your enemy with what? Love. Because it is love what? God before all else. Be filled with the love of God. And to be filled with God is to be filled with love. And therefore, a nation of godly people is not a nation that is racist, is not a nation that kills and destroys the earth and kills and destroys its people. You cannot have war, death, and destruction where true and righteous love exists between people. And what Christ was trying to get at then was this. If we could come to love others as we love ourselves, if we could come and notice it says as ourselves, which means we love ourselves as well. And it is through the process of loving oneself deeply that we love other people deeply as well. Out of that then becomes a world filled with love, and the kingdom of God comes to earth itself. In a world, though, filled with hate and resentment and anger, you're going to get a world then filled with war, murder, death, suicide, robbery, rape, violence, and all the kinds of things we see so much about in the everyday news. This is one of the reasons why you know that this nation is not a Christian nation. You got people who go to church. The Christian so-called religion is the predominant religion, But the people are not filled with Christianity by any stretch of the imagination, ladies and gentlemen. If this country was a true Christian country, we wouldn't even be here talking about black men and black women love and all that kind of thing, would we? We wouldn't even be talking about our problems as a what? As a race and as a people. Because that kind of problem would not exist with people who truly love and had the love of God within them. But it is because we don't have that love that we have the kinds of problems we have today. This is why ultimately Jesus and the other prophets can predict the end of the world as being one of death and war, because ultimately people filled with love and egotism and false pride and the other kinds of things are going to bring war and death upon themselves. And this is, of course, is what we see today. Reagan has no love, no righteous love. Gorbachev has no righteous love. People with righteous love cannot make guns and weapons that threaten to destroy the whole of the human race. These weapons come out of what? Hate, fear, anger, pride, resentment, and the other kinds of things. So then, when we express hatred and hostility, we are expressing the hate instinct. And when you see then that death instinct, the hate instinct being expressed, you see then ultimately it leads to the destruction of something. It can lead to the destruction of the buildings you live in. You hate the landlord. You hate the people who live in it. You hate yourself, and then you destroy the buildings around you, destroy the people around you. Anything that gets your neighbor's goat, you do. You like to see them upset. You like to blow their cool. You like to do things to them out of this instinct. Well, some of us can take hate that is expressed against our enemies. So, hey, they deserve whatever they get, right? And they deserve death, or they deserve the pain that we put on them. But you know, there's one thing peculiar about the hate instinct and the death instinct. It's no respecter of persons. Your own death instinct can turn around against you as an individual. You not only can hate other people, but you can what? Hate yourself. And that hatred that destroys other people, that pains other people, that kills other people, that same hatred, when it's curved around toward you, it's not going to stop doing it, is it? It's going to do the same thing to you. It's going to turn right back around into self-destruction, suicide. In some instances, we say the person that commits suicide is the individual who really wanted to kill somebody else. But for some reason, they lacked the courage, or they didn't quite know who they wanted to kill, or what have you, and ultimately they turned then that instinct upon themselves. Hate then leads to self-alienation and self-destruction. It leads to depression. You know, when you're depressed, you talk about yourself. I'm no good. I'm a low so-and-so and so. I don't deserve to live. I'm worthless. The same kind of thing that you tell another person when you hate them. You're low. You're this, you're a dirty dog, so forth. When you're in depression, often you'll do what? Turn it right around on yourself. I don't deserve to live. When you hate somebody else, you say, you don't deserve to live, I'm going to kill you. Often then, when you're into self-hatred, you tell yourself the same thing. I hate myself. I don't deserve it. I could just die. I wish I would die. And often people will proceed to die and to kill themselves. It leads then to descendants, where the love instinct leads to transcendence and moving beyond the self. Often then the hate instinct moves to descendants and going into oneself to decadence. Hatred leads, it has its euphoria, but it's an unnatural euphoria. That is, you're going to get your kicks not from self-love and the loving of others, but from trying to deal with your own self-hatred, trying to escape your own self-hatred. You can only feel good when you've hurt somebody. You can only feel good when you've slandered someone, when you cut someone down, embarrassed them, conquered them, beat them in some kind of way. So you have some people, they get a euphoria from hate. but it is a euphoria that leads either to the destruction of themselves or the destruction of someone else. Or in dealing with that euphoria, then they have to go into drugs and alcohols and the other kinds of things as a way of getting a good feeling one way or the other, because hatred is not a good feeling, whether it's expressed outward ultimately or inward. It leads to sadism, the desire to hurt someone else and then get a pleasure from seeing them hurt. You have some people we call sadists, right? Whose only pleasure and sexual pleasure is someone else in pain. Often the rapist does not really want sex from the woman. And sometimes with the rapist, you can say, well, here it is, you can have all you want. And at that point, he loses his interest. He wants you to what? Struggle and fight, and he wants to degrade you and hurt you. And it's only through the degrading of his victim and hurting the victim and forcing the victim against their will and seeing the victim in pain that he gets his climax or gets his sexual jollies, you see. And this is what the sadist is about. A person filled with hate is often a person who can only get pleasure through hurting in one form or another. Masochism is also in there. The individual who can only get some pleasure from being hurt, from being dominated, from being ruled, from being degraded in some form or another. And you have places in the village where masochists hang out, waiting for someone to come along and treat them like a dog for the night, so that they can get at some kind of sexual pleasure. It's a pathetic kind of situation. A lot of this hatred comes out. A lot of this pleasure comes from enslavement. Now let's look then at the kind of love, as we said earlier, that comes from hate. We said nasty people love. Oh, they get all these great feelings we talk about in the records. And they go for trying to hook into someone and get someone to love them only. And they experience this great love. But ladies and gentlemen, it is not enough to love. The love must be based on the right foundation. One of the reasons why so many marriages are falling apart today, even though the people, when you see them on their wedding day, they say they're getting married because they love each other, is because they love each other for the wrong reason. It is not enough for you to have a feeling of love, to be caught up in the cuteness of some boy, or to be caught up in how sweet he is, or to be caught up in how you can't get him out of your mind, how he makes you feel, how his touch just makes you go off all over. It's not enough. That's not enough. You cannot base a family or long-term relationship on that kind of love. You cannot base having children on that kind of love, you see. You must stand back and look and see upon what kind of love, on what kind of roots that love is growing from. And you may note then that that love is growing out of hate, that love is growing out of resentment, that it's growing out of an unhealthy situation. And even though you have this great feeling and this great longing and this great need, those feelings and those longings and those needs will ultimately destroy the one you love and destroy the children that you claim to love. Because a love that flows out of hatred is a love that's ultimately selfish and self-centered. Is a love that ultimately does not give the other person humanity and does not recognize them as an individual. This kind of love is a love where you love yourself, but you can only love yourself at the expense of destroying the ones you love, only reducing them in some form or another. Love that comes out of hate.
WRFG Atlanta, 89.3 FM. Something going on with the volume, so we'll fix that and come forward. Dr. Amos Wilson at the witness stand. It's actually time to switch and call the next witness to the stand. So we'll keep on moving, you know. Take that as a cue.
See, I must love vanity. Instead of five love and unity for black people, I did them. Me say, roll the river down, down the road. Roll the river down, down the road. Oh, beautiful river, me say me walk the reach across the border. So me say me roll the river down, down the road. So me say me roll the river down, down the road. Roman soldier, I tried to brutalize I. But jump to the pound of Johnny, could I never control I. Me say roll the river down, down the road. So me say me roll the river down the road.
Where people with honor that love to honor, particularly the invisible, to honor all that is, and in doing that, to learn to honor ourselves too. And I know that at least my own Christian upbringing has tended to bring me to my knees for prayer whenever the world seemed to be collapsing around. And in that moment, there's not a whole lot of dignity left, uh, to keep my head straight up between my shoulders. And so I end up bent in the begging posture. And what I've learned with my elders is that this kind of posture is not very charming in the eyes of our ancestors, uh, because they want us to walk elegantly in the battlefield of life, knowing that we have a purpose and that we are not alone. Even when we look around, there seems to be nobody. And so I'm hoping that the time and the opportunity we have together can be invested in the business of revisiting prayers for ourselves, prayers for loved ones, and prayers for the world. We do ourselves a greater service when our energy and our genius is invested in making something around us better. And so the idea of self care taking in this context is more about reaffirming our interconnectedness. See, here I am from the world on the other side of the great waters, and I still feel like I'm looking at brothers and sisters everywhere I go. And so it seems to me that the whole notion of stranger in a strange world is all relative because the world is all our home, and wherever we go, whoever we meet could be a relative. So today, I'm not sure about what I need to share with you. I just feel strongly that this is a unique opportunity for us to revisit perhaps the subject of ritual and the subject of the production of sacredness in the hope that maybe this can become increasingly the kind of mantle that we surround our daily life with, allowing us to be not just protected from adversities, but maybe putting adversity in defiance. Because more often than not, the issue is not to duck, to run away, to shield away. It is to stand so tall that somehow adversity gets scared. There is a kind of predictability that the conventional world has successfully educated us into. And so we become not the hunter, but the hunted. And this is not the dignifying thing about life. In the past 2 years, I found myself really humbled by the attack on my own grandiosity. Uh, and it came in the form of loss. Uh, Last year, lost both of my parents, 6 months apart. And for the first time, life had a different color. I heard last night someone mentioning the fact that with the parting of parents and he being the oldest, was left at the head of the line, front of the line. And that's exactly what was delivered to me, being the oldest in a family that has tried very hard to uphold the values of the ancestors in the midst of very, very deep change. Uh, it has had its blessing as well as its curses. Because in Africa right now, one of the biggest problem is that the clash between the indigenous and the so-called modern. is producing tremendous amount of confusion, and it is also raising the issue of where is the place of the ancient values in modern day? What space do they occupy? And the more depressing question is raised by the fact that modernity seems to negate anything that does not align in its crazy pursuit of progress. Something seems to be constantly at risk of becoming dead, of becoming a casualty. And what I've learned being in the modern world and working with people like you is the witnessing of the ancients and the indigenous wanting to be reborn here, wanting to be reborn in people who have been, I would say, indigenized. And that is quite impressive because while third world in general is looking at modernity as the heaven of humanity, uh, it is quite sobering to find out that modernity has begun to look at the indigenous world as a possible place of some kind of redemption. And this is the kind of thing that drives me to places like this. It seems that in order, therefore, to allow that indigenous energy to come forward, to be born, there is a lot of cleansing to be done. It is perhaps not surprising to see that the modern world this year has been experiencing drought. The dryness of the realm might be a reflection of the increasing drought in the psyche of the culture. And there won't be some kind of Moses or some kind of Messiah showing up from God knows where to sprinkle the water of cleansing. It will have to arise from the ground. It will have to come from the very people who have heard the call from the other world and who want to do something about it. And so my sense is that we are it. And the question is, what are we going to do? What are we going to do in order to cleanse all these layers and layers, these scales of negative energy that has pushed the bright self, the grandiose self, so deep inside that it can only burst out when the hammer of modernity is not about to fall or when modernity is not looking. This is why, in coming up here, I thought that doing something with water, a ritual involving water, might be a relevant thing with the possibility of helping us address this issue. I feel strongly that this has to be part of our individual purposes, what we came into this world to do. And listening yesterday about the moment of grandiosity that has visited each and every one, I couldn't help but think that every time we walk along the line of that which we came into this world to do, we are indeed walking in our greatness. And it is that greatness that I tend to associate with grandiosity. Of course, in a world that is seeming to be so confused, this walk along the line of purpose has the side effect of awakening all kinds of adversities. And this is why I like to say, and I enjoy the idea that you know that you must be doing something right when all hell breaks loose around you. Uh, because the journey to fulfillment of one's purpose is not paved. That road is not paved. And every time there is a renewal of the commitment to embrace that purpose, the earth begins to shake and the world around start to object. And somehow you become the other who is doing the wrong thing, who is contributing to turbulence and confusion. The thing that I love really about my culture is rooted in this, the fact that purpose and life are very intimately connected. I'm always reminded of the beauty of all these ceremonies involving just a fetus who is looked at as an entity who has successfully managed to engage in the journey to partake in something in this world to the point that the birthing ceremony becomes the supreme welcoming gesture given to a newborn. And that has always kept me thinking, is the absence of a proper welcome conducive to a life that is disoriented or maybe predictable or something like that? I think of how many in this room were welcomed enthusiastically when they were being born, and what is the effect of that in the quality of their lives. And so the response to that calls for the need to reinvent uh, rituals that welcome us regularly. Something along the line of recreating over and over an act of welcoming that is genuine enough to make someone feel like he is being reborn. And places such as this are really helpful to at least try to engage our imagination in those areas. And that's why the ritual that I would like to propose for this gathering, I would like him to have a welcoming component, one that make people feel that they're being seen once again. And so I associated it with water because uh, of its spiritual meaning, one that can cleanse, can purify, and at least wash away whatever is hanging on to us that we don't need. And since we have a significant body of water here, that might be the right thing to do. And who knows if we get some water directly from the heavens, since the sky is now dressed up for something like that, uh, it may be a bonus. Meanwhile, I also can't help but think of the life force behind all these trees that are surrounding us and wondering what we can do to respond to whatever call they keep directing at us. This kind of spiritual awareness is really not a denial of reality. It is an effort to broaden our horizons of consciousness, to broaden it in such a way that uh, it makes us a whole lot bigger than we are. That the space that we occupy can melt to occupy a greater realm than the one that we are immediately conscious of. Earlier on this year, I was in Africa, and I was involved in this intense ritual of uh, at least giving an ancestral uh, an ancestral place to my father who died a year ago. And one of the things that I was thinking about was the idea that I have seen in the West, the dead are not given sufficient attention and therefore are still among these trees, uh, on the streets, uh, sometime in the offices. Uh, and will make a huge effort to try to live our life as if they're not there. And yet, everywhere I've asked the question, who has not dreamt of a loved one who is dead? Everyone have checked in as having had an experience like that. And it seems to me that this means that this is not an issue that only addresses itself to places that are still so-called indigenous. This the same reality that is there that makes the dead more alive than ever and wanting to be involved in our lives because they know better. They know that there are things that we can't see, but that are very important for the quality of our life, and they would like to show us how to address these things. This is not just confined to there; it's actually confined to the world. And I feel that we come here mostly because these dead have asked us to come over, not because a flyer came to you. And so the question, therefore, still remains: what do we do in order to honor that, to acknowledge that, so that we in turn can feel a whole lot more connection than usual? If we can call the ancestors into our midst, then it gives us the chance, at least, to explore the possibility of that gift inside of us that we can give as a way of exploring the dimension of our own greatness. At the core of the indigenous philosophy or spirituality is really the idea of the healing power of giving. And this is probably why among the Dagara people, these uh, this giving is inspired by the notion of a gift, which in turn is connected to purpose that then provide a certain direction to life, which is essentially inspired by delivering that gift. Uh, to put it differently, the thing that I like the most is to know that the purpose that is part of the indigenous thinking is that we arrived here with a lot of suitcases, and in those suitcases are all kind of goodies. The problem about it is that all these goodies are not for us individually. They are for the people around us. And it is our task to do everything we can in order to empty these suitcases and to distribute whatever is in there randomly. There is something in there that we need to be very attentive to because giving empowers both the giver and the receiver. And there is a ritual act that takes place at that moment, which jacks up the spirit that translate into a very profound healing. And so the question I have to you is, what is the gift we know that we carry inside of us? And how do we go about making it available to others? They say also that the origin of illness comes from the inability to deliver our gift. And this is really food for thought. How come my not being able to give my gift make me sick? And I've given a lot of thought to it. And what I've come up with was that indeed, imagine yourself as a UPS delivery person uh, who drive a truck full of gifts. And each one has an address. Each package has an address. And you show up, knock at the door, and say, "This is for you." They say, "No, I don't think so." Then where are you going to go? Where else? And so at the end of the day, you return home with the truck still full. Sooner or later, these gifts take on a life of their own and they begin crying and yelling inside of you. And the psychical feeling, the impression you have of yourself is that you've landed at the wrong place. You have the right addresses, but nobody recognizes them. I think that this is a very poignant problem that requires that somehow we be able to play both the role of givers and receivers. The receivers is as much responsible for summoning the gift out of the other as the giver is in convincing the receiver that this gift is his. And so therefore that throws us into the department of advertising. Uh, how do we drum up enough attention to our gifts so that there is a crowd of receivers showing up to the point where it produces a reverse problem, making you wonder whether you have enough gift to give to all these people. Uh, and I think that places like this should give us the opportunity to explore that. Uh, the weight of most of the gifts that we're talking about are not to be measured with standard scales because that's not what they respond to. Instead, what they respond to is something so purely connected with the heart that indeed you know when you have received the gift and you know when you have given a gift. And the best place for that to occur is really in what we call the sacred place, which means that that kind of space that we create, delineating it from the ordinary and investing it with our intention that it be the home of the invisible, and that as the invisible consciousness comes, that it make that invisible presence make every gesture we make sacred. That's when ritual begins to happen. And so we need to understand that the distinction between, therefore, the profane and the sacred is basically delineated by intention. What we want an ordinary looking thing to be depends on the intention we inject into it. Otherwise, a stone is going to just be a stone. But with a spiritual infusion, a stone can become a mountain. And that mountain, in turn, can be the mirror of the greatness that we carry inside of us. Uh, Dagara shamans will always not hesitate to point to the fact that you are connected to a mountain, and they will point to a small stone, creating this kind of confusion. Uh, if this is how tall the mountain is, it makes you feel like they're pointing at your smallness. But in fact, this is because in a sacred space, the smallest thing can be equivalent to the greatest thing there ever is. And this is why I don't know the idea of symbolism is so important in the practice of spirituality. If a little stone represents a mountain or is a mountain, because in Dagro we don't have a word for the word represent, uh, because the question is, if something represents, that means that what that thing is representing is not there. Representation calls attention to the absence of the original. And so, therefore, it raises the question as to whether that which represents the absence of something can actually live up to the standard of the other that is not there. And so, it is useful in that context to name things for what they are as opposed to what they're supposed to represent. This way, I will give you a stone and say, take this mountain. It represents your own tallness, your own greatness, because mountains are visible from far away. Let you be visible from very far away. And this is something which, when taken directly into the psyche, can resonate very loudly. And I think that even in the midst of all kinds of adversity, the capacity to reaffirm your greatness by way of carrying an object that is that greatness means that you are conscious of your own healing as opposed to your need to go somewhere in order to get some healing. Uh, I don't know if that makes sense. What the hell? Uh, and so I wanted to throw all these ideas in so that they become food for thought, something that we can then take into sacred space later, uh, where we don't have to explain things in great detail, but where the space can be pointed at and power be given to you to transform it from its ordinary look to its extraordinary capacity, so that in it we can interact with one another in a way that that is constructive, that is healing. And so, with that in mind, I want to stress the fact that the ritual we're going to be doing later on this week needs to be part of an ongoing personal preparation, and in that preparation there will be certain things that you need to constantly keep in mind. What is it that I carry in me that is not mine, that I need to allow the spirit of the water to wash away?
What is it that I carry in me that is not mine, that I need to allow the spirit of the water to wash away? That is Baba Maladuma Some. Maladuma Some, Teaching Hard. Comes from a lecture called The Forgotten Art of Drowning. The Forgotten Art of Drowning. Yes, Maladuma Some, the author of Water and Spirit and a few other books. That's one of his most well-known books. Thank you for those of y'all who've been touching base on the phone and giving your feed forward. I was playing the lecture, so I couldn't put you on the air live, but we give thanks because that's what it's all about. It's about sharing, sharing. And as both of our special ancestral witnesses today have shared, not to be redundant with the word, it's really, when we get down to brass tacks, love is an action verb. You see it. Love is an action verb. I want to play this music of this, and then we're going to make one more transition to someone else who has something very important to say. Stay tuned to yourself, y'all. Maladoma said, let the water wash it away. Come to the river. That's what Diane Reeves said. Whatever the language you need to translate the principle. Take it all in, y'all.
Ocean is the spirit of the river. Open your hands, she's a sweet and steady giver. She'll turn your tears of sadness into gladness. Praises to Ocean. Ocean is the spirit of the river. Open your hands, she's a sweet and steady giver. She'll turn your tears of sadness into gladness. Praises to Ocean.
Creator, Ptah, Oludumare, Odumakoma, Enyame, Ama, Neter, all traditional African names for the one God. Abosun, Orisha, Loa, Neteru, aspects of the divine, Nsamanfo, Sheps, Egungun, ancestors on whose shoulders we stand. Black notes, libation, a spiritual offering, a prayer with props to God, to earth with water, fire, air, breath of life of the Creator, divine presence, wisdom, power, connecting us to ancestors. Queen Nzinga, Harriet Tubman, Sojourner Truth, Kwame Nkrumah, Patrice Lumumba, Malcolm X, Stephen Biko, connecting us to ancestors, struggles to progress, past to present, enlightenment to African cultural, spiritual space, gracing the cosmos, the universe with aspects of the all, encompassing our entire being, singing in harmony with joy, in pleasure, beyond measure, in passion for life, voiced like the song of the river, flowing with the sensual grace of Oshun. Oshun, Heheru, Nana Asi, Oshun, representing the beautiful, the feminine features of life, lightly dancing to a timeless rhythm, in tune with the tone of a spiritual offering, a prayer with props to the highest, down to earth with water, fire, air, breath of life of the Creator, divine presence, wisdom, power, like the nucleus, the core, black, sweet, black, woman, energy, strength, black, man, energy, complementing, black, woman, energy, unifying, connecting us to ancestors. Martin Luther King, Queen T, Imhotep, Zumbi, David Walker, Nat Turner, Ida B. Wells, Marcus Garvey, Medgar Evers, Fannie Lou Hamer, Fred Hampton, George Jackson, Bob Marley, Peter Taj, John Henry Clark, Fela, Anikulapo Kuti, connecting us to ancestors, struggles to progress, past to present to future, transcending space and time, ancient to future, black notes, libation, and pie, a spiritual donation to creation, creatively opening the way from this day forward for divine melody, presence, rhythm, wisdom, word, power, power.
Yeah, yeah, oh, yeah, oh.
This is the Ancestral Rock Radio Station for Progressive Information. Black Notes, Libation, Oshun Song. We're going to leave you with one more tune before we seal up with our final, I don't want to use the word final, for this evening, for this afternoon, witness on the Ancestral Stand. We're going to leave you with this one. And so next time, we'll bring it all the way forward down to earth, where we've been the whole time, and just in case any of the language has been feeling over your head, you know, more symbolic than substantive or whatever. When this often repeat conversation come up again that this brother is going to sing about, let's put some context to it. When they talk about the white man heaven being the black man hell, are we talking about simply something up in the sky? Not at all. We're talking about a way of life, a perspective, as both Nana Amos Wilson and Baba Malidoma have clearly outlined, an alien perspective, something that's alien to us as indigenous people of the planet Earth. You know, a way of relating that is so much a push and a war against the mama and against nature instead of harmony. That is, of course, a black man hell. So stay tuned to yourself, you know. This is the Ancestral Rock, and we give thanks for the moment. Bless up yourself.
Before we came to America, we were living in the East by the Nile River. We were living in a luxury, enjoying freedom, justice, and equality. We were Silk Road and slippers of gold, the wealthiest and the wisest untold. Now we got the poorest of the poor. Nobody wants us at the door. So my brethren, it's easy to tell a white man even is a black man.
You're here.
When the white man came to America, he told the Indian, I am your white brother. He was a red man. I come to do the best. They sell it back to him and never heard the ways. With this white woman and fire water, tricks and lies, he stole America. Original owner of this nation. He's up on a reservation.
Noel Ellis.
So my brethren, it's easy to tell a white man heaven is a black man. They needed someone to work the land. His back was so big they needed two black man. So they commissioned Sir John Hawkins to commit the world's most grievous sin. To take a man that was born to be free and bring him down into slavery. To sell a man like merchandise. All his body done put on price. So my virgin, it's easy to tell how white man and heaven is a black man.
Sound will lead the way night and day. We give thanks. We live thanks. That's not a so-called Freudian slip. It's reality. We live thanks. Gratitude. I give thanks for big brother Muta Baruka. He was here for Bob Fest a couple of years ago, and he was talking about Bob Marley music, you know, and reflecting on how things have gone and how things continue to evolve, or sometimes it seems like disintegrate. And what he was saying in essence is he's looking forward to the day when you can go to the museum with your youth and say, you know, once upon a time we used to have a man named Bob Marley, you know, he used to have to sing these type of songs because they were so relevant. His point is, why was Bob Marley's music so relevant still 50 years later after he sing it? One of my teachers, I pray she's listening so she can hear the love. I know she feels it anyway, Mama Lydia Mena. She used to be up here hardcore with us on WRFG, not just on my show, but many other shows. Much love, Mama Lydia. She used to always say, you know, a prophecy which fulfills is a failed prophecy. Why? Because the purpose of the prophecy in the first place is to give you a warning, which will give you an opportunity to correct course. Stay tuned to yourself. Take care of each other. Take care of yourself. We're down our road. More love. We'll leave you with Mama Sabamfu Some.
So how is everyone? How is everyone? All right. That's what I'm talking about. It's a pleasure for me to be back in Portland, but for me to be here at Tribal Spirit, at Earth and Spirit. So I am from a Dagara tribe in Burkina Faso, one of the smallest countries, tucked between Ghana and Ivory Coast. It's a landlocked country, so if you don't know about it, it's okay. Sometimes when I tell people I'm from Burkina Faso, they say, what? It's the name of an animal? I say, it looks like it. But in this small country, French speaking as its official language, because we have 60 languages with 60 tribes, yes. Not counting the dialect. And that is a whole different ballgame altogether, because sometimes you cannot even understand, you know, the dialect that they're speaking. And in this community, they're not really different from other indigenous communities around the world, except that maybe they're a little bit crazier. In fact, the Dagra people are called the wild people, the one who is always going away. We don't have a hierarchy in the community. We do have elders, and the elders are very important. The elders, along with the children, create a stable environment for all of us to have some form of sanity. And so for us, children are the messengers from spirit, or in fact, spirit, coming to test our genuineness, our willingness, and our sincerity. And so when a child appears at your door, you don't ask, whose child is this? You take care of the child first. And then you start to find out who it is. Because spirit might be taking the form of a child, showing up in front of your door, and if you neglect this child, then you have to answer to spirit. And so in the same way, the elders are important because they hold the vision of the community. They help not only pave the way for us, but they also help to inspire or jumpstart us so that we can also begin to bring our gift into the world. And so what is this thing about fanning the fire of the community? Why, you know, community altogether? You know, we have been talking about communities for ever and ever, and the topic still comes. So what is it about communities that we need to talk about community? You see, if you went to my village with this question, they'll tell you there's no answer. Just stop asking question and live it. That's as simple as that. You see, in the village, it's about doing. You know, there is a need for something, just get up and do it. So don't sit and talk about it. You know, you drive everybody crazy. And so So community, how do we define community in such a diverse world? In such a world where some of us are born in Europe and then we come here, and some of us are born in Oregon and then we find ourselves in Alaska, and some other wander around, they go to California, and then, it's very complicated from that point onward. But there is something important about community, and that's why we keep on coming back to it. In my tradition, community is a guiding light behind any being, any person that helps that person or being achieve their life purpose. For without a community, an individual is lost without a place to contribute, without a place where the light can be shone upon them. And so I believe that is that very piece that creates that longing for us, the longing for the community. Who can see me? Who can accept me? Not tolerate me. Because you only tolerate when you don't know what else to do not to kill the person. It's true. And so community basically goes into the really nitty-gritty of our human need. It is at the core of our human existence, because upon community comes relationships. And we all know that healthy relationships are at the heart of every human life. Without a healthy relationship, we will continue to do therapy until we die and come back and die again, and nothing is going to change. And so what we are yearning for is basically a place that will give us that home, not just a physical home, because a lot of us have homes and we even have alarms in them. And sometimes we go back, the alarm is still on and we're still looking in the closet in case someone got in there. Yeah? So the home we are really longing for is not something that is outside somewhere. The home that we are looking for is actually in the heart, in the soul of other people out there. And so this notion that you cannot go back home is true. And it is also true that you can go home. And so how do you go home in a context where you don't have a physical home? You can go home to the heart of the people who hold you in, or who have always held a space there for you. It doesn't matter whether you have well behaved. It doesn't matter whether you are the craziest child they have ever seen. But as long as someone has a space in the heart for you, you will always go home. And so that's why in the Bible tradition they say either we are all going to go home or no one goes home. And that is why people who are homeless really help us to look at our own homelessness. It's not because we live in a home that we don't feel homeless. We still feel that longing for someone to recognize who we are beyond, the need for other people to make us what they want us to be so they can feel comfortable. But people who really know that there is a spirit in this person, that there is a spirit that has come with a purpose, a spirit with a purpose that whose gift needs to be received so they can be freed. Because if we are not here with spirit, with gift, then what are we doing here? And so the part of the fanning of a community fire is to find that gift within the community where we belong, the gift that our community must receive. And that is part of the reason why we're continuously creating clubs, why we're continuously looking for one more degree, hoping that it's going to now give us permission to go out and live our purpose instead of making a living. because those are two separate things. In a context where your gifts are valued, where what you bring is exactly what the community needs, you don't need to make a living. All you need to do is to be yourself and live your purpose. And that is part of the reason why the government doesn't like artists very much, because, because they don't conform, despite the fact that they have created all kind of mold to beat them into them and stomp them into them, they still manage to escape. And they continue to do what they need to do. But thank God for it, because if they don't create art, if they don't make art, we'll all go crazy. Art is what breathes heart into the community. Art is what keeps us sane. And so, so how do we then create the space for the artists? How do we create the space for the children? How do we create the space for the elders and for us? And is that a possible thing in this mobile community? Well, we'll find out.